Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Now for today's video, we're going to be covering some big news. It was a major acquisition out of a company by the name of Sundial Growers. We've talked about them on the channel before, and the really exciting thing about this news is it actually impacts a number of other companies that we've recently covered on the channel. Now before we get into it today, you guys, please take a second to hit the like button. It's a huge help to both myself and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to do so. And let me know in the comment section below if you're currently holding shares of Sundial or any of the other companies impacted in this deal and how you think they now stack up to the competition in the Canadian MJ space. Now without further ado, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. For today's video, we're going to be covering some big news, providing an update on a couple of companies that we've actually talked about on the channel previously. One of them is Sundial Growers. The other one we're going to talk about in a second here. We're coming off the back of a big long weekend here in Canada, Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to any of you Canadian viewers. And let's get right into today's content. So you can see here, Sundial Growers, they closed out Monday, October 11th session at 67.5 cents US. They trade on the NASDAQ exchange under the ticker symbol SNDL. We've talked about Sundial a couple of times on the channel before, so if you missed those videos, I would encourage you to go take a look. This is a company very similar to a lot of the other stocks in the MJ space here in Canada that's really struggled over the last couple of months. You can see back at the start of June, this company or stock was trading right around the $1.30 US mark, and since then it's steadily declined, virtually cutting its share price in half. That's a story that's pretty consistent with a lot of companies in this sector, and really why I'm so optimistic or feel like this is such a great buying opportunity for a lot of these stocks that have really been kicked to the side and their share price has just been beaten down over the last couple of months. Now based on that close, we're looking at a market cap on Sundial according to Yahoo Finance of about $1.4 billion US. That does make it still a very sizable company in the Canadian MJ space. And as we're going to talk about on the next slide here, a lot of things have been going on internally with this company since our last update, so I'm super excited to jump right in. So this is the big piece of news here, you guys. Sundial Growers to acquire Alcanna Incorporated. This came out Thursday of last week, so October 7th, and the article basically states Sundial is looking to acquire all of the issued and outstanding common shares of Alcanna, which represents a total consideration or approximate value of the transaction of about $346 million. Now what's interesting about this transaction here, you guys, in addition to the fact that Sundial fits within the channel niche, we've talked about this company previously, is the fact that Alcanna is actually a strategic partner and a majority shareholder in a company called Nova Cannabis. And Nova Cannabis we actually just covered on the channel a couple of weeks ago. We did a deep dive into their business model. We actually talked about this relationship with Alcanna. So not only does this acquisition give Sundial exposure into the Canadian alcohol or liquor industry, but it also strengthens their portfolio of strategic investments in other Canadian MJ plays. And as we discussed in those initial Sundial videos, they also have strategic investments in Indiva, along with the Valence company, which are both companies that I personally hold and have talked about at length on this channel. So again, it's super interesting to see the consolidation in this industry and the interaction between these companies as the Canadian MJ landscape continues to evolve. Now later in the video, we're going to go into the investor presentation and look through the deck in relation to this acquisition. We're going to talk about the portfolio, the store count, but one thing I did want to mention on this page here, you guys, is actually in relation to the structure of the deal. So under the terms of this agreement, Alcanna shareholders are going to receive 10.69 or about 10.7 common shares of Sundial for each share that they hold of Alcanna. And if you do the math on this, this essentially says they're going to get $9.12 per Alcanna share held. And that's a perfect segue to this slide here, which looks at the Alcanna share price. So you can see as of last week, again, a long weekend here in Canada, Alcanna closed out at $8.06. Back at the end of August, this company was trading in the $6.50 range. It has ran up quite a bit over the last couple of months, perhaps in anticipation of this deal. Maybe some news was leaked out, I'm not sure. But you can see as of close again last week, it is trading very close to that $9.12 price point. Now this is a question I get quite frequently here, you guys. If the transaction value is at $9.12 per share, why is Alcanna not trading at $9.12? And that really has to do with some uncertainty in the market. This deal is expected to go through in December. Obviously, stuff can happen between now and then. I don't expect any big regulatory hurdles with this transaction, but here in Canada, either unfortunately or fortunately, depending which way you look at it, the government is very involved in our economy and these type of transactions, and there is some uncertainty, and that's exactly why the market is discounting this transaction, and you don't see that Alcanna share price trading at the full $9.12 value at this point in time. Now that being said, I did want to jump over to the Nova Cannabis ticker as well. So this is NOVC on the Toronto Stock Exchange. You can see a big run up actually. So this stock is actually counter to the trend we're seeing in the cannabis space here in Canada. Nova is actually trading at $2.65 at the end of August. They've run up and are actually trading over $4 Canadian at this point in time. Why I wanted to bring this page up here, you guys, is just to show the market cap on Nova sitting at about $235 million Canadian. So keep in mind, Alcanna is a majority shareholder in Nova Cannabis. They own about 63% of this company. So if you take the market cap of 235, you multiply it by 63%, it works out to $148 million Canadian. So a big piece of this acquisition's value was actually the investment in Nova Cannabis, about $150 million Canadian worth of value. And again, not to take anything away from the liquor portfolio, but this is definitely a very valuable asset for the team at Sundial. And this is actually the exact slide that we talked about in the Nova Cannabis presentation. So you can see here the strategic investment from Alcanna, approximately 63% equity ownership with a 2-year lockup period, which we talked about in that video. Now in the context of the Nova video, we talked about this strategic investment really being a big benefit in 2 ways. Number one, their access to AAA premium real estate locations here in Canada. And secondly, that long history and track record of successful execution in the liquor retailing space. And both of those obviously are going to benefit the team at Sundial in a big way, similar to how they were benefiting the team at Nova. So now we're going to jump over to the actual Sundial website. In addition to their regular investor presentation, the team at Sundial has actually put together a second or an additional investor presentation specifically talking about the acquisition of Alcanna. This came out October 2021. So I wanted to call that out because a lot of times when there's big transactions or big news at a company, they actually will publish a standalone deck or presentation, which gives a lot of interesting and in-depth information about that specific event. And that's exactly what we're going to dig into for the rest of this video. So these are the actual transaction highlights here, you guys. Number one, this is the big one, improved and sustainable cash flow. So over the last 12 months, the Alcanna chain of liquor stores has actually thrown off $16.5 million in free cash flow. And that really gives the Sundial team or portfolio that stability and financial strength to continue to pursue various different investments, acquisitions, and just day-to-day business operations. Plus, now they expand into liquor, so they've got cannabis and liquor under the one company umbrella. Bullet point number 2 here, you can see they now have enhanced exposure with that strategic investment in Nova. Obviously a publicly listed pure play cannabis retail operator, which we just talked about. Bullet point number 3, again, we just mentioned that deep retail experience and expertise from Canada's largest privately held liquor retailer. Sundial is also going to realize both cost and revenue synergies, which are anticipated from the operational efficiencies. You got to think here, you guys, in terms of distribution, storage, marketing. Because Alcanna is in the retail space, similar to Nova, similar to Sundial, they're going to have a lot of savings and opportunities to consolidate operations between these 3 divisions. And the 5th point here, which I thought was nice of them to throw in, especially if you're an Alcanna shareholder, is just the opportunity to be a part of this bigger company, participate in future business direction, and really help shape or create the future of Sundial as a larger conglomerate type of company in both the cannabis and liquor space. Now this slide here, you guys, we're not going to spend a ton of time on. A couple of numbers I wanted to point out. So market cap on Sundial, this is in Canadian dollars, sitting at 1.7 billion. So it does line up directionally with what we saw in US funds on Yahoo Finance. Enterprise value 517 million. Now the other two big numbers or categories we haven't yet talked about. Number one, unrestricted cash. So about 36 cents per share or $743 million is actually held in cash here, you guys. So keep that in mind when you're investing in Sundial. A large portion of their market cap is actually sitting in cash, which is phenomenal and allows them to really go out and find these type of acquisition opportunities. The other piece here, you guys, is debt, which is currently sitting at $0. And you can see in the footnote here, Sundial actually announced its debt-free status in December of 2020. And again, that's massive for these type of companies because they don't have to worry about interest payments or refinancing debt down the road. The other thing I wanted to point out here, you guys, as someone who lives in Calgary, this company is based in Calgary, Alberta. That's where their corporate headquarters are located, and they now have over 500 employees. So they're definitely growing into a very sizable company here and getting into that mid-cap type of space. Now, all that being said, Sundial has struggled a little bit over the last couple of years here, you guys. They have had some issues with really their identity as a company. Are they a pure play producer? Are they a company focused on strategic investments? Now they're getting into the liquor industry. So they've come right out and said they've really reshaped their business model and they're now focused on two distinct pillars. So number one is going to be cannabis and liquor operations. They've got the upstream cultivation, so actual growing of cannabis. They've got their midstream product manufacturing, and then they now have their downstream assets in both liquor retail and cannabis retail locations. And again, we're going to look at the number of stores they have in a second here on our next slide. Now the other pillar is really their investment operations. They've got that big partnership with Sunstream Bancorp, which we talked about at length in our last video. They've got the Canadian Cannabis Credit, and then at the bottom here, it's listed as select merger and acquisition focused equity investments. So this is stuff like Indiva, the Valens Company, and now Nova Cannabis. So they've really got some diversified investments in the MJ space that spreads out their risk and gives investors in this company the opportunity to reap the benefits of various other small cap players in the Canadian MJ space. And I think that's really a big selling point for Sundial investors. This is a company that's very well followed here, you guys, compared to any of the other operators in Canada. And I think potential investors, especially those based in other countries like the US, who don't have a very in-depth understanding of the Canadian landscape, may look to invest in companies like Sundial because they're almost getting ETF-like exposure through these various strategic investments. Now this slide here is really a breakdown on the various retail banners. So you can see they have 5 brands now. 2 of them are in the cannabis segment. So they've got the Spirit Leaf, which was another big acquisition we talked about on the channel. 108 stores. They operate across Canada, Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and Newfoundland. And over the last 3 months, so June to August, they've had annualized system-wide revenue of $162 million. Now, Nova Cannabis, obviously part of this acquisition, 62 stores focused in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, slightly smaller in terms of revenue compared to Spirit Leaf, but again, much smaller store count. We talked about Nova really pushing the Value Buds brand and getting into the cost-conscious segment of this market, and you can see it's really paying off exponentially for them based on their per-store revenue generation, so that's great to see. Now on the liquor segment here, you guys, 3 different banners, Ace Liquor Discounter and Liquor Depot. Both of these focus exclusively on Alberta. This is actually where I shop for alcohol myself. 112 stores under Ace Liquor, 50 stores under Liquor Depot. And what's interesting to see here, you guys, is when you actually compare the liquor sales stores to the cannabis sales stores, you can see the liquor stores are performing considerably better on a revenue basis. So Ace Liquor Discounter, for example, 112 locations, 345 million, compared to Spirit Leaf, virtually the same number of locations, but essentially half the revenue. Now, obviously, liquor is a very well-established industry here, you guys, but it was interesting for me to see and compare because in my mind, I really think cannabis, once it's fully evolved and mature market, is really going to mirror what we see in the liquor industry. So it was definitely an eye-opener for me to see how many locations Sundial was able to acquire, plus the investment in Nova Cannabis, for this $350 million price point. And I should mention that $346 or $350 million price is in Canadian dollars here, you guys. So they were able to get a ton of locations here, 171 to be exact, in terms of liquor stores, plus that investment in Nova for $350 million Canadian. So when you compare that to some of the market caps we're seeing on these cannabis retailers, it definitely is a little bit of a gut check in terms of the valuation on some of these type of companies. Now the third banner here is really focused on the wine and spirits. It's called Wine and Beyond. They operate in Alberta and BC, 9 locations, and again, latest 3 months, annualized system-wide revenue, $105 million. Now what's super exciting here, if you're invested in Sundial, and for full disclosure you guys, I am not. I am invested in some of these subsidiaries or strategic investments like Indiva and the Valens Company, but I do not hold any shares of Sundial myself. However, you can see on a pro forma basis, so combined entities here, you guys, Sundial plus Nova now represents Canada's largest cannabis retailer. So you can see Sundial, 108 locations, Nova with 62. Keep in mind they own 63% of the company and they're aggressively building that store count out. So together, Sundial essentially owns 170 retail locations here in Canada. Now after that, High Tide would be next up with 101 locations. Again, we've covered High Tide on the channel. Fire and Flower, we just put out a video on these guys, 93 locations. And then after that would be Tokyo Smoke. So very robust offering in terms of their retail footprint and exposure here in Canada. And on the left-hand side, you can see the geographic footprint or layout, really covering Canada from coast to coast here, you guys, except for that Quebec market. So to wrap things up, I wanted to talk about why this news is so important for shareholders in Sundial, Alcanna, or Nova Cannabis. So number one, it provides exposure to Sundial's 2 core pillars, which again we talked about, the cannabis operations and that stable and diversified investment portfolio. They've got the strengthened balance sheet and the benefit of that free cash flow from a well-established retail business. And overall, this creates a stronger, more robust and well-balanced company to push forward in both the cannabis and liquor space here in Canada. So that's it for today's video, you guys. Huge news out of Sundial Growers. For anyone who's invested in this company, you should be very happy with the details of this transaction. I personally think they got a steal of a deal here for $346 million, looking at the number of locations in the liquor retail space and the fact that you get that big investment in Nova Cannabis, which I personally think is an undervalued play in the Canadian retail MJ space. Now, as mentioned, there's a ton of more information and videos about these companies on my channel, so feel free to take a look. McNallie Money, if you're not already subscribed, please do so and make sure you hit the bell icon to get those notifications. If you're still watching at this point, make sure you smash the like button, you guys. It's a huge help to me and the channel. And on a final note, thanks so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.